Well, hey everybody, this is Chris DiFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by La Marzocco, who has been making espresso machines by hand in Florence since 1927. La Marzocco espresso machines are some of the most trusted and coveted espresso machines in all of the world. That's why you're going to find them at the heart of some of the best coffee bars on the planet. And that is because they are dedicated to innovation, quality, consistency, and listening to the needs of their customers. That's where it's all born from. Case in point would be a machine like the KB90 espresso machine. They invented straight-in portafilter locking technology that allows for better ergonomics. There's a scale built into the drip tray that allows for more accuracy of your extractions. On top of that, you have the auto flush feature, which keeps the group heads clean automatically, increases your workflow and cleanliness. And of course, that's just one example of so many different types of espresso machines that La Marzocco has for you to choose from. And they are available to help you make that right choice for your business. All you need to do is reach out to info@lamarzocco.com and they will get you the help you need to get the right machine for your business. And visit their website at lamarzocco.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Espressly, who's creating custom branded mobile apps for your business so that your customers, when they have this mobile app, they also have a piece of your culture and your branding in their hand. So you're not just a dot on a map with Espressly. When you sign up to work with Espressly, there's no setup or development fees. You get a drive-through payment scanner, receipt, and label printing capabilities. You also have the data stored in the app itself, and it integrates with some of the world's best payment processing systems seamlessly, including Square. To sign up and have them get started on your app today, check them out over at espressly.co. That's espressly.co. Okay, everybody. Well, today I wanted to talk to you about the importance of taking imperfect action when it comes to making progress. And I want to relate this also to finding time to do things. And this came in the form of a question that I had from a person in the audience of one of my talks at Coffee Fest, asking about it's nice to be able to talk about these things. It's nice to be able to theoretically plan on developing systems and building relationships and all the stuff we talk about here on the show. Sure, these are great ideas, but how do you find the time to actually put them into play? How do you do? I'm really busy. Every day is 5 or 6 things that I've got to get done, and usually I don't get them done. And it's a valid question. And the answer, I think, has to do with the fact that often, if you're the one asking that question, you're in charge. And because of that, you are accountable only to the needs of the business as the business kind of communicates to you its needs, but beyond that, it's up to you to create the constraints. In this case, the person who asked the question had decided that they had enough time to go to Coffee Fest, as an example. Now, that's a big commitment. That's days and days and hours of time away from the business, where obviously they're hoping to get some really good information and stuff that'll help them build a better business. But they valued the event enough to say, I have time for that. And it really comes down to a question of how much do you value the results that these actions promise should you do them consistently? That's the question. And when things become urgent, we find a way. I always talk about this when it comes to finding ways to create more revenue in the coffee shop. When COVID hit, we got really creative, where we wouldn't have even dreamed of entertaining the idea of selling half gallons or gallons of lattes. We did. We did it because we needed the money, because we didn't have the money, we didn't have the income. So necessity was the mother of invention and creativity. So we can do it. It's just that the urgency is just not quite enough. And so I think there needs to be a vivid imagination of what the benefits are of whatever it is that you might be procrastinating on because you don't have the perfect opportunity to start it. This is the equivalent of, anybody who likes to journal or read a book. You sometimes never really get around to doing it because you don't have that perfect nook in your house with a cup of tea and the sun's not hitting you just right and your favorite pen's not there, you lost it. And so how can I do these things if I don't? Well, are you reading a book or are you creating an aesthetic? And you can relate that, I think, to running a business. You're never going to start perfectly. You do have the opportunity and the time to make small steps in the direction of a better place, whether that's setting up meetings with your staff. Maybe you can't do one-on-ones every single week. Maybe you can start every other week. Start them at 20 minutes instead of 30 minutes. You're not going to do them perfectly either, and maybe there's subconsciously some resistance where you're like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, or maybe they don't want to do it, so I don't want to do it. And do we really need it? And you end up talking yourself out of that. Or it could be something else. Revamping the menu, narrowing down your options, raising your prices, you name it. There's a lot of things that we've got rolling around in our heads. And unless we give ourselves like a giant chunk of time and the planets align, and we can almost guarantee that there's no chance of failure, we're just going to keep procrastinating because we're more perfectionistic than we like to think. And that procrastination ultimately boils down to being motivated by fear. There's a certain kind of fear of missing out that I think might be actually healthy in this case, which sounds weird, but let me explain. I want you to entertain the idea that fear of missing out could be a good tool for you to embrace when it comes to what am I going to miss out on if I never take action on these things? If I never take steps in the direction of improving the relationship I have with my manager, or making better systems so that we can be more consistent across multiple stores. If I'm waiting for the perfect opportunity, it's just never going to come. And if it never comes, then what we're doing right now is just going to stay the way it is. And you know very well that things don't just stay the way they are, they actually go backwards, especially when it comes to something as dynamic as a coffee shop. The shop is just not going to stay perfectly clean. There's always balls in the air. There's always things changing. And so I want you to embrace the idea that you need to first generate urgency by imagining the future and what it would look like 5 years from now. Just say 5 years from now, if you started taking small steps, taking imperfect action in small ways toward a big goal, gives you room to change along with the business instead of making these vast changes, these sweeping changes that end up damaging more than they fix. By taking imperfect, small actions, then you start to see the change happen over time. The issue is not that we can't do it. It's just that we're not sufficiently motivated by it. In change management theory, the idea is the pain of the current status quo has to outweigh the pain of the change to get out of that status quo. And once that pain of being where you are is bad enough, just like we saw during the pandemic, then we open up opportunities. So how can you personally, I can't tell you for you how to do that, but how can you personally generate that urgency and then say, okay, now what am I going to do about it? I'm going to take this next step, something small, the minimum viable system, minimum viable change. Or, if you don't have a system for inventory right now and you just need to put something together, you could just fall down a rabbit hole of tons of different spreadsheets and templates and be like, oh, it's so overwhelming, I don't know what to do. Anything is better than what you're doing now, probably, if you're not doing anything. Start with something small and imperfect and embrace the idea that we are going to change this over time and we're going to make it better. But if you don't start, you're just never going to get there. So the message today is generate urgency and a vision for the result of the long-term change that comes from small steps over time. Imperfect action creates the best results when it's guided by your values. When you generate urgency for what you're building in the future, it'll keep you consistent and you can find the time to really make things better. And along with finding that time and seeing that change, of course, you're going to increase the likelihood that you get to derive joy from what you do in the coffee shop. So I thank you all for joining me again on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to Keys to the Shop. Follow Keys to the Shop on Instagram at Keys to the Shop. If you're on LinkedIn, you can find me, Chris DeFurio, on LinkedIn or Keys to the Shop's page on LinkedIn. Have an amazing day, and I will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break, from Keys to the Shop.